OpenAI has been missing revenue targets. They have their CFO and Sam Altman have allegedly been fighting, but publicly they've said that there is no infighting going on. Anthropic is soaring in their valuation. That looks like they're going to raise a round of funding. They're looking at $50 billion at a $900 billion valuation, which would leapfrog OpenAI's last valuation. So it feels like there's a lot of headwinds. Oh, and of course, the Elon Musk lawsuit that we just covered on the last podcast. So there's a lot going on right now pushing against OpenAI as they're apparently trying to crack a billion weekly active users. I think their goal was actually to hit at the end of last year. They weren't able to do that. So it feels like there's a bunch of headwinds. I got to kick this over to you, Connor. We have been OpenAI fans from the beginning. It is the OG. So in no way are we just like turning the tables and saying like, forget OpenAI, they're going to die. We're all moving on to something greater. I want OpenAI to thrive and succeed. But like, where do you see them today as far as in the competitive landscape, and can they recover from what feels like a little bit of a slowdown?
Well, it's interesting that you use the word competitive landscape, right? Because what do we even mean by competitive landscape, right? Because this is the thing that when you're in an IPO season, public opinion really matters. Like, yeah, I get that all these investment banks will have done valuations and things like that, and they're just looking at hard numbers. But you cannot escape just vibes in this thing. Doesn't sort of like show up anywhere in a financial statement. But Anthropic has been more and more powerful. Gemini has been more and more powerful. We saw OpenAI kind of like stumbling over the last few months. They definitely fell into third place. I don't think I'm breaking any news there, especially after Gemini 3.1, after November, December with 4.5 Opus from Anthropic. And OpenAI just hadn't had their new model. And now 5.5 is out. It's getting good reviews, all that kind of stuff. But OpenAI was definitely going for they were trying to sort of shoot the moon, right? They came out with Sora. They're trying to kind of create the app. They're trying to create advertising. They're trying to create essentially, Jaeden, you and I talk about this a lot. It's almost like OpenAI was going for the everything. They were going for Google, right? They were sort of like going for the best, an operating system essentially. Whereas Anthropic was going for OpenAI in the meantime, right? So Anthropic really focused on coding and enterprise, and there's just a ton of money in coding and enterprise. And OpenAI started to fall off, and then they kind of like had to call it like a code red and everything like that, like everybody else did. But when you're in an IPO season, headlines like this are absolutely devastating. It was at the top of the Wall Street Journal stamped with an exclusive, which makes everybody pay attention. And essentially, it's, as you're sort of saying, it's falling short of monthly revenue targets, things like that. That $1 billion user thing is really funny because in any other world, like getting $1 billion, there's only like 8 billion people on the planet. Like they're talking about trying to get $1 billion, and now they're going to fall short. But guys, as you know, because I'm sure our audience out there is pretty savvy, when you're pricing something like this, you're not pricing based on today. It has almost nothing to do with today. You're pricing on future earnings. So that growth is exactly what makes you valuable. So you could say, but you already have 900 million users. It's like, right, but you're priced as a company that's going to have 1.1 billion. That's where the pricing comes from, right? So all of a sudden it's thinking like, well, are they going to be able to fund all these massive new data centers? So why does that matter? Well, it matters because compute matters. I mean, if you talk to anybody inside these AI labs, they will tell you one thing, which is like, yes, you need the talent, absolutely, but you need compute, crazy amounts of compute. And without this money from the IPO, you simply can't invest in data centers. So now the CFO, Sarah Fryer, is saying that, wait a minute, hold on for a second. Like, can we invest in that future infrastructure? Can we invest in building chips? If you look at what, and Jaeden, if we look at the last 18 months, who's building chips now, right? It's like Google's building chips. Amazon's building chips. Like I think Microsoft is building chips, right? And all of a sudden, and you have like, NVIDIA out there too. The thing is, like, if you look at what Google is doing, Google just made a gajillion dollars just now off their cloud business, right? But OpenAI and Anthropic do not have that luxury. They don't have something to fall back on. You can make fun of Meta all you want, but Meta's revenue coming in from even Facebook, which who uses Facebook except our parents, but Instagram, WhatsApp, all that kind of stuff. They have revenue drivers. Google, cloud. Amazon, cloud. Microsoft, cloud, and all the other things. Like, so when they fall short on Copilot, when they fall short on whatever Google's falling short on, they have an enormous revenue source to back this up. OpenAI is out there, without a safety net with this. So that's what, and I'm with you, Jaeden, 100%. I love OpenAI. I am dying for them to succeed. It just makes me a little worried for their IPO and what the implications are.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I mean, if you look at the finances, we had all the big guys come out with like
Yeah,
their quarterly earnings reports. And what was interesting is you saw Google as one of the only companies that really had their stock take off after
right.
their earnings report, because Sundar Pichai basically come out and said, "Look, we're revising our capex upwards." I think they bumped it maybe like $10 billion more, somewhere 145 billion. If I'm not misquoting that correctly, up from 135 billion. So they moved it up $10 billion, at which a whole bunch of other companies did too, by the way. Meta, Amazon, Google, they all bumped it up. The difference was Google's the only company that their stock jumped because Sundar Pichai literally came out and said, look, we have so much demand for Google Cloud. Our only constraint was we don't have enough compute. If we had more compute, we'd make more money. Like, we have customers lining up. We just can't service them because there's, the demand is too high. And so when they bump their CapEx expectations up, their stock goes up because Wall Street's like, great, you have more customers lining up. You're going to spend more money. You're going to make more money. Cool. Then you have Meta come in doing the same story, except Zuckerberg's like, look, we're going to spend more. And it's like, our ads are going to be better. Like, we're going to optimize them. And it's like, okay, well, you've had a lot of years to optimize your ads. I mean, I don't know what percentage of like more sales you're going to actually be able to drive. And what's interesting, all of these companies surpassed revenue expectations, but I think we're just looking at a place where with OpenAI, when OpenAI announces like CapEx going up, how much more is your revenue going to go up is the big question. And so someone like Google, they're crushing it, right? Because they have the cloud platform, which, by the way, like Anthropic and OpenAI or other AI models have to run on top of. So Google's making money from the models and they're pushing out a model. So it's like Anthropic's on the Google Cloud, and then Google's taking the money that they're giving them and dumping it into Gemini to like make their competitor. So it's kind of a crazy cycle where Google's in a very, very good position, and OpenAI needs to really focus in order to come out ahead. So one of the big things, that the big drama was like the CFO and Sam Altman apparently were beefing because the revenue has not grown the way they expected with OpenAI, with Anthropic kind of taking a lot of the enterprise right now.
Uh-huh.
And so because of that, their CFO is literally saying, we got to make more money or we're not going to be able to pay for all these compute deals. The $500 billion Starlink project, which, we have Oracle in that one, and then you have SoftBank.
Yep.
On the news that there was kind of the revenue drop with OpenAI, which was interesting, Oracle and SoftBank stock both dropped because they're so deeply embedded, and if OpenAI doesn't have enough money to pay for the compute or demand, that puts them in a tricky situation. So anyways, tricky situations all around. One silver lining for OpenAI that I want to call out real quick, and that is that OpenAI and AWS have officially partnered and launched OpenAI models on top of AWS Bedrock, because the exclusivity clause with Microsoft is officially ended. And the second it ended, literally the next day, OpenAI was on AWS with Bedrock. And so I personally think that deal was probably something holding back some level of enterprise adoption for OpenAI, because the Anthropic's model was on AWS and it was running away with the enterprise. I believe that we will see a solid uptick for OpenAI, maybe the end to some of their revenue growth problems, if they can really push their foot on the gas with enterprise on being on AWS, which is the biggest cloud platform that the most companies use.
Yeah, and just in case these aren't sort of like things that you're super familiar with. I mean, like when these giant cloud providers, the Googles with, or Microsoft or AWS or something like that, like that's where these things are hosted. Like if you're a company that you're using AI, like you have to host all these things somewhere. And with AWS, they had this great model with Anthropic because they'd invested, or up to 8 billion. I don't think they went up to 8 billion. I'm not sure. Maybe they're going above it now. I'm not sure. But it's in a way you'd think like, oh, well, it's in your interest for Microsoft to only use OpenAI and vice versa, all that kind of stuff. And that's all changing. People are, now Microsoft uses Anthropic. Everybody's sort of like, it's a little bit of a free for all. But Jaeden, the part I wanted to get to, and you sort of touched on it briefly, is like this partnership with Microsoft and OpenAI. I think that for you and me in the couple of years that we've been doing this podcast together has been one of the most fun conversations, because it keeps coming up. What does AGI mean? And the reason that's important is because when Microsoft spent whatever it was, $11 billion to buy essentially 50% or 49% of OpenAI, huge deal at the time. There was this clause in there that OpenAI put in there, and OpenAI was sort of we're sort of the kind of the high and mighty. When we hit AGI, all these things would trigger, right? It's like all of a sudden Microsoft wouldn't have complete access to it, because back then in late 2023, we thought AGI meant Skynet, right? We thought all of a
Yeah.
sudden that meant that like the world would be taken over by robots. And everybody kind of saw that coming, but it wasn't coming for a while, all that kind of stuff. And so it clearly Microsoft couldn't, control Skynet. But guys, these aren't just like, people talking in a back room. These were written into the contract where when AGI was achieved and OpenAI would be able to sort of say that, whether it was or not, Microsoft would lose a tremendous amount of control in terms of commercialization opportunities. It seemed like the most insane deal you've ever seen in your life. But that's how weird AGI felt back in 2023. Does anybody even talk about AGI now? So we've gotten rid of that clause, thank God, because AGI feels it kind of feels like it's here in a certain way. Certainly when you're using Gemini or Claude or something like that. So at least they're getting rid of that. These things are all, Jaeden, I don't know how you feel about it, but in anticipation of this IPO, it just feels like everything's cleaner. You had this kind of enmeshment with Microsoft and OpenAI, and now it just feels like they're not so enmeshed. They're just partners. They invest in each other, all that kind of stuff. To me, I don't know. It just feels cleaner.
Yeah, it is wild though when you look at it, because Microsoft gets a 20% revenue share of everything coming in from OpenAI from that original investment, which is, I'm sure, an amazing deal for them. The ROI, on the original investment is huge, and they get that all the way through 2030. So
Right.
they are getting that for a little while. Even post IPO, companies like Anthropic are not going to be burdened by revenue share. I don't believe there's any investors that are getting that. So that's just another way that the money Anthropic gets, they can actually spend faster. And OpenAI is going to be forced to raise more. Anyways, puts
Right.
them in a tricky situation. Now, for everyone that's saying this is a bad deal for Microsoft, I will also say there was a hilarious quote that came out from Satya Nadella where he said that Microsoft is going to, quote, exploit the royalty-free OpenAI access through 2032. So basically, like, they don't have to pay any extra royalties to get access to OpenAI, but OpenAI can charge royalties to other cloud providers. And so, yeah, Microsoft is going to exploit those. So don't worry, they don't get the exclusive. They don't get OpenAI exclusively on Azure, but they are going to make some money out of this. Wild times for OpenAI. We'll keep you guys all updated on everything going on. Listen, guys, if you want to stay up to date with how to actually use AI to improve your organization beyond just the headlines that we cover on the show, and some of the actual tactical breakdowns on how you can help your employees improve their mindset. We've seen a lot of shifts in the workforce in the last couple months. The number one place I would recommend going is checking out Conor's AI mindset course. He has a whole course that he brings to entire organizations. So I would recommend asking whoever's in charge of HR or your purchasing department, have them discuss bringing this course into your whole company. People are seeing incredible ROI. Microsoft did a whole study on the AI mindset, and Conor rolled this out over at Gap. They studied them and they found that people that had taken the AI mindset training, in addition to using AI tools, got a 2x on the quality of the output from the AI models. So amazing, science-backed. A huge congratulations to Conor on the incredible success of the AI Mindset training program. If you're interested, we'll put a link in the description to that. And I'm begging you, get this inside of your organization, and you will probably get a raise for how much it helps your company out. Not guaranteed, but I would check it out. All right, guys, thanks so much for tuning in. We'll catch you all in the next episode.